¿Qué tal, comunidad? Aquí es su abogado Ray Ibarra Maldonado. Let's get started. Alright, family. Si está buscando el video en inglés, esto es. Si está buscando en español, el siguiente video va a ser en español. Okay? This one is English we're doing tonight, ladies and gentlemen. First, we're talking about Mary Jane, marijuana, the new law in Arizona. Please, if you're interested in this topic or if you know someone who's interested in learning about the new Arizona law, and very importantly, whether or not someone who is not a U.S. citizen can be impacted by the use of marijuana, whether you're a DACA recipient, you're going to be a permanent resident someday, you're a permanent resident, you want to be a citizen, this is the video you need to see. This is a video you need to tag them on. Don't call them out, right? Hey, but or forward secretly, whatever you got to do so they can see this video. So do me a huge favor, give us that like, give us that share so more people can learn if they're interested in the marijuana and how it impacts in immigration. Please go ahead and share that out now. And of course, as always, throw your questions down. Even if it's not marijuana related, I can answer it, do my best to answer it at a later time, all right? So plain and simply, what this new law states, and it was certified when Doug Ducey signed the election results while Trump was calling him. So now it says, it is not a crime to possess marijuana for personal use or drug paraphernalia used for marijuana only, right? Marijuana paraphernalia or plants. So we're talking about 1 ounce of marijuana. We're talking about 5 grams of concentrate. And as far as plants, it's 6 plants per adult in the household, maximum of 12. So 2 adults over 21, you can have 12 of your own plants. That's what the law gives you the right to have, really starting now, which is kind of a weird situation we're in, though, because it's like you can possess it now, but nobody can sell it to you yet. Nobody has the authority to do that. So another question we got from a lot of folks was, well, when? When can we start expecting to see people over the age of 21 who apply to this being able to benefit from this? Now, the Department of Health Services has to have applications available for people that already have a medical marijuana license to sell on January 19th. And the law says they can approve before that, but if they don't approve those applications within 60 days, those folks that already have the medical dispensaries can start selling to the general public. So this puts us at March 20th, 2021, which is a Saturday, so the week after that, that's when medical dispensaries can start selling to the general public. So that is in March of next year, all right? Now, we got some questions over here. Again, this is the one that's going to be very important that I know a lot of people, oh, I'm blocking the question there. The question's blocking me. Can you add clarification for DACA folks how it can affect them nationally for adjusting status? Oh my goodness, we need to have this conversation. If you are not a U.S. citizen, this is something you need to know because the state of Arizona and many other states across the country are giving people over 21 the legal authorization to possess marijuana for personal use, for recreational use now. But guess what? The federal government is not. The federal government still has marijuana as a controlled substance, which it's a federal crime still to possess marijuana or anything related to marijuana. We're going to go over that in detail in just a minute on the immigration consequences. First, going to get to the general questions, and then we'll talk about immigration after that, all right? So we have some questions that people send over. If you don't follow us on Instagram, at Abogado Reyes, where we're at. We put out asking for questions earlier in the week. What happens to my pending marijuana case? I actually had a call on this last week. So anybody that has a pending possession of marijuana case, it can't be for sale, that doesn't matter, and it has to be below the threshold amount, right? So if you have more than what they say, they can still move forward. If you got pounds and you're saying this is personal use, it still has to be under the threshold amount for the case to be dismissed. So there are current people with possession of marijuana cases. Those cases should be getting dismissed. Those individuals can then immediately file a motion to expunge, which is huge, ladies and gentlemen. This is gigantic to really start chipping away at the iceberg, because in Arizona, we really don't have a substantive expungement law. We have this kind of fake expungement called set-aside that for sure in immigration doesn't do anything. And for the most part, someone calls and says, I want to get my record sealed, I want to get it set aside. It's still there. Anytime you're arrested, anytime you're pulled over, that's still there. But this adds an expungement into the system so that now you can go back. If you have a pending case right now and you get it dismissed, you can then file a motion to expunge that the judge has to grant, then has to send it over to DPS and arresting agencies, and they have to properly take that arrest and information out of the system and only be available to you or your attorney. That is awesome. That's a great start to what I hope is a much larger expungement, because we're really lacking in the state of Arizona in the area of expungement. People who've served their time, people who have, paid back their debt to society, deserve the opportunity to move on. And this is what an expungement does, and this is what the statute does. The bad part about it is very limited. Like, you have to be able to prove you were under that very small threshold amount. I got a call earlier in the week from an attorney out of state saying, hey, can you help me get an expungement for my client? Look up the case. It's a possession for sale. Nobody with possession for sale, even if it's marijuana, is going to get expunged. It has to be this very limited, and you have to be able to prove it was less than the ounce, which is going to be very difficult to do. I'm talking about ordering the police reports, ordering transcripts. The good thing is there is a substantive amount of money in this law that's going to go to nonprofits, it's going to go to the courts to try to help people know about the expungement and apply for it. So I was very happy to see that. But again, it's going to be limited to those that actually did possess a very small amount and can prove it. Because I've been an expert on a case in New York, I remember, where they said, please analyze if this was less than 30 grams. We'll talk about that a little bit later. And I had to get the police report, I had to analyze it, I had to write a letter to the judge. And in the police report, they just said a usable amount of marijuana. It didn't give the exact weight. Nobody ever weighed it. During the factual basis for the plea, nobody said what the weight was. So it was very difficult to be able to ascertain exactly if that person would qualify now for this expungement, if a judge would grant it and if a prosecutor would go with it. But that's the expungement part, which I'm very excited about. The bad thing, if someone does qualify and they don't have that conviction, you still can't apply yet. They wanted to give the courts a little bit more time, and it won't be until the summer of next year that you'll be able to send out that application. So anybody currently pending case can get it dismissed, then can do the expungement. Only those folks. Everybody else has a prior conviction, already been convicted. You have to wait till the summer, till next summer, and there'll be we'll do another video on it when it's eligible. There'll be a lot of nonprofits that'll do videos and information out about it as well. Again, because there is a substantial amount of money in here to be able to advertise and let people know about that. So that'll be coming summer of next year. Not too early to request the police report, to request the transcript, to start getting things ready, because sometimes those take weeks, if not months, especially during coronavirus. But for right now, we can't expunge those today. All right. So let's see what else we got over here. Do I need a permit to grow my own marijuana plant? Do you need a permit to grow my own marijuana plant? Now, this is very interesting again, because you can right now grow, again, 6 plants per adult, maximum of 12 per household. So you can grow, if there's 2 adults over 21, 12 plants in your house. It's very specific. It has to be in an enclosed area. If it's outside, you're talking about a greenhouse with a lock. If it's inside, we're talking about a door with a lock. Not accessible to children. They're very specific about that. Not viewable to the general public, unless like sort of like binoculars or a drone, very specific. But to the general public walking by your house, it can't be viewable. You are allowed to possess your own marijuana plants. There's no application. There's no filing fee. There's nobody to ask permission from. And the strange thing is, you can have that today, but again, how are you going to get the marijuana plant? Because nobody can sell it to you yet. And this was kind of the same thing with the medical marijuana at the beginning. They were licensed to be able to distribute it, but nobody was licensed to be able to bring it into the state, right? So the seeds just blow in the wind and magically get to Arizona and get planted, and that's how they were able to get this medical stuff started. And can you do the same thing? If you're in your backyard and something blows in and you plant it, well, there you go, because you're able to do that now under the law. They just can't sell it to you until March of next year, right? So no permit is needed for your marijuana plant. Another really interesting part, to me, this was fascinating, right? So all my people that are cooperatives, that are the worker-owned folks, that are all about either socialism or communism, you're going to love this part. Well, socialism, say that instead. You're going to love this part. You can give away. You don't need a license to even give away to an adult over 21 up to 6 plants or up to an ounce of marijuana. So if you got that green thumb and things are going good and you're producing more and more, you, under this law, you can't sell it. You can't advertise it anywhere. You can't sell it, but you can give it away to another adult as opposed to going to one of the shops and purchasing it. I thought that was very interesting, and the opportunity for people to be part of the sharing economy and help each other out as opposed to simply supporting the big businesses that will be running these shops. So that was pretty cool. And that is the issue on the marijuana plant. So there you have it, ladies and gents. Now, what else do we have here? What form do you fill out if you have a possession conviction? That was kind of going to the earlier point. No form yet. They'll produce a form. They're giving money to the court to implement this, so I'm pretty sure they're going to come out with a form that you'll probably be able to get at the library or whatnot to fill it out. I doubt it'll be that complicated, but it is not available yet. Check back in summer of next year. All right. Will it be legal to sell through food asking for a friend? Well, you tell your friend, and I've hidden who these come from, so no worries, folks, but it came from someone who's asking for their friend. So you tell your friend that unfortunately not, right? The law is also very specific. I mean, it reminds me of the Dr. Seuss, the green eggs and ham. Have you eaten green eggs and ham on a train? No, I have not. They literally go through and list, like, you cannot smoke while you're driving. You cannot smoke while you're the passenger. You cannot smoke while you're in the compartment. So there's all these places you cannot smoke or use marijuana, mainly public places. You can only really use it in your privacy of your own home. So if you want to put it in food at a restaurant or a bar or something like that, you're going to need a license to do that. Again, it's interesting because I just said you can give it away to somebody, but in order to be able to do it commercially as part of a sale to somebody, you will need that license, which is a very coveted license, and available first to those that already own the medical dispensaries. So unfortunately, no, I don't think you'll be able to use it in any other commercial ways other than having the permit to sell it directly to the consumers. Also interesting, there will be no delivery at least for the first few years, right? So the delivery provision was put in there that they can't start delivering in a few years. Also very specific about having to be locked up and only a certain amount and penalties for that. But for right now, they'll have to be in-person stores, all right? I think that was all the questions that folks sent over. If somebody had another question, drop it down below. Bad part of the law, very disappointing. It seems to be a significant amount of money will be going to law enforcement. So when you talk about defund the police, this is not a defund the police bill. This is a give more funds to the police and don't take this money into account in other funding that they're getting. So it's going to give a significant amount of money to good stuff too, to community colleges, to social justice programs, but there are also a substantial amount of money in there for law enforcement, including specifically police departments. And based on the percentage of employees that they have, so it's probably going to be Phoenix Police Department, the killer squad, getting much more money, which we're not looking forward to seeing. Right? So now I wanted to get into a little bit about the immigration thing. And this is huge, folks, because we can't just talk about the fact that this is now the law on the books. We have to talk about who can still be harmed, even though this is a law that gives you the right to not be arrested by the state for it. Okay? The law is very clear that you have the right to possess it, and it's really focusing on in your own home. You don't have the right to use marijuana and then go to work. If your employer has a drug-free policy and you get tested and you come back positive, this law does not protect you. This law does not protect you, okay? It only protects, buenas noches, Veronica, it only protects people in their own homes, their own personal use. But it doesn't essentially give you rights in any other setting. So a school, a workforce, a jail, a prison, they can all still say no. They can all still say negative. You are not allowed to use drugs while you work for us, while you go to school here, whatever it is. So unfortunately, it's recreational, but doesn't give you a strong set of rights outside of your own personal use, right? Doesn't give you the right to say, no, I have the right to use marijuana. You don't have the right to fire me. You don't have the right to withhold my financial aid. None of that stuff. Nope. This is just the right to use. Everything else. Sí, claro que sí, Verónica. Después estamos haciendo en español a las 7:30. So that's exactly what is negative about the bill, is I think it gives away the impression that it's going to benefit an extreme amount of people. It's going to be an extreme and drastic change. In some sense it is, I think, more getting us towards being a more freer society. But at the other time, it's also still very restrictive and doesn't give any rights vis-a-vis the federal government or any employers or your right to use it in a public space, right? Now, switching gears to the immigration world. What on earth does this mean for immigration? And going back to this great question here from Maria, can you add clarification for DACA folks? How it can affect them nationally for adjusting status? This is the million-dollar question. So anyone that has DACA right now, strangely enough, if you use or possess marijuana, I can say this, but you have to listen to the whole thing. It's not going to affect your DACA, right? Using marijuana, ingesting marijuana, and you go to reapply for your DACA, they don't ask on the application, have you used marijuana in the past 2 years or a year, depending on how long your work permit's for. So you'll get that approved again. The huge problem, don't just cut that first part and share that. Nope. The huge problem here is when you go to become a legal permanent resident, they have what's called the grounds of inadmissibility. And the grounds of inadmissibility say that if you use, not just convicted of, you use drugs, you can be denied admission as a legal permanent resident. Be very clear on that, okay? This does not give you the right, if you're a non-citizen, even though the state law says you can, to possess or use drugs. Federal, completely different ballgame. They have their own rules, and they stick to them hard. You don't believe me? Let's take a look over here, all right? See if we can get this up over here. And we have a pretty comprehensive look here from the Congressional Research Service. Great job that they did getting this here. And this is the first part, inadmissibility, right? Admissible, can you become a legal permanent resident? And someone who has a criminal conviction for a foreign marijuana offense, nope. An admission of commission of a federal, state, or foreign marijuana offense, an attempt or conspiracy, knowing or having reason to believe you've been involved in drug trafficking, This could even be you're an investor in one of these companies. They can say that you have a reason to believe you're involved in marijuana trafficking, even though the state is making it legal, right? Benefiting financially if your spouse perhaps is involved in one of these legit businesses, ladies and gentlemen, this could also lead to a denial in your inadmissibility. So you're saying, okay, so if I'm DACA, and again, I'm not telling you this is fair. I'm not telling you this is just. I'm telling you this is freaking ridiculous. This is ridiculous that the state is so far ahead of the federal government in this area, and you're giving rights to certain people and their freedoms to certain people, but the federal government is still saying, no, it's still legal. That is unfair. That is unjust. I'm not approving of that. But what I'm here to tell you is, I, as an immigration attorney, and us as an immigration law firm, if you admit to this in your interview, they're going to deny you. Even if you say, well, Arizona made it legal, why would they make it legal if it was, no. That argument's not going to work. So you're saying, okay, well, if I'm going to adjust status someday, then I won't do it. But what about somebody that's already a permanent resident? Someone that's already a permanent resident can be deported from the country. Here's the ground of deportability: a criminal conviction for a federal, state, or foreign marijuana offense. Here's the exception that I want to emphasize. This does not apply if the conviction for a single offense of possessing 30 grams or less of marijuana. This 30 grams thing is good, for the grounds of deportability. That means if you're already a legal permanent resident and you have a marijuana conviction that's 29 grams of marijuana, you're still going to be okay. But people get that confused and think, oh, if I'm DACA and I have less than 30 grams, there's an exception for that. Not for the grounds of inadmissibility, only for the grounds of deportability. What's the difference on those, you might be asking yourself? Inadmissibility means, can you become a permanent resident? Deportability means, can the government take away your permanent residency after you already have it? That is the question, all right? So grounds of deportability, you're saved by the 30-gram exception there, but you also have possibly the trafficking to worry about, or the aggravated felony, or abuse or addiction to marijuana if you admit to that. Now you're telling yourself, okay, if I'm a legal permanent resident, I want to be careful, but maybe I should just become a citizen, right? Let's go to an exact USCIS policy alert where they talked back in 2019 on the fact that other states were passing recreational and medical marijuana laws. And here's what it says. To become a citizen, you have to have 5 years of good moral character if you're already a permanent resident. So you've been a permanent resident 50 years. So look at your good moral character nonetheless. Clarifies that a violation of federal controlled substance law, including for marijuana, established by conviction or admission. So you're asked a question, an admission, not, does it have to be a conviction means court case. Admission means you said it, right? You posted on Instagram, you posted on Facebook pictures of you smoking or using marijuana. They're going to take that as an admission, right? Is generally a bar to establishing good moral character for naturalization, even where the conduct would not be a violation of state law. So we got to be very careful here, ladies and gentlemen. If you are a non-citizen, this state of Arizona law does not trump the federal law, and federal law at every attempt, from becoming a permanent resident to traveling abroad as a permanent resident to becoming a U.S. citizen, this could still negatively affect you for the rest of your life. So you want to be very, very careful with marijuana use and admission if you are a non-citizen, right? Hopefully that makes sense to you. Hopefully it clarified. If you're a U.S. citizen, 1 ounce of marijuana, 5 grams of concentrate, 6 plants, and after that, if it's more than the 1 ounce, then we're going to petty offense world. If you're under 21, it starts with some classes and some treatment, and it seems like they do a good job to not immediately criminalize it. But nonetheless, just because the state is giving you the permission to use it does not mean you'll be okay with the federal government. Now, there are bills that have been proposed in the Congress and the Senate to get rid of marijuana listed as a controlled substance and get in line with these states. Those haven't passed yet. So until they pass, the federal law trumps the state law, and you have to be very careful if you are a non-citizen. And I hate to preach about this stuff. I mean, I don't want to be the lecturer telling you what you can and cannot do. And again, I don't get on here to tell you. I just come here and tell you what I know from my experience. You know, immigration still takes it very seriously and very negatively, despite what the state of Arizona has voted for, what the people have voted for. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Muchísimas gracias, Verónica. Ya vamos a empezar en español. Lo agradezco mucho del corazón sus palabras. Muchísimas gracias, José Alfredo, va a estar con nosotros. Muchísimas gracias, Luis, también, como siempre. So we're going to switch over now to español. If you're not watching on the live, don't worry about it. Drop the questions down that you have later as well, and I will get to them as soon as I can. And again, you can show some gratitude by sharing the video, liking, leaving that comment down below, whatever it is. Hopefully I provide you some educational information here, and you got some good use out of it. Thanks so much, everybody. And if you have any other questions, just let us know. Have a great night.